This sitting is now resumed. Prior to the suspension, we were debating the amendment to the National Council on Substance Abuse Act. To that we shall revert. Honourable Member for St. Michael West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Yes, he's still the Honourable Member for St. Michael West.
That's correct.
The Honourable may be a little bit in doubt to some. That he's member of St. Michael West.
No, Honourable Member, I was going to say the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Yeah.
That's right.
I'm sure that you clearly recognize me, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for the opportunity to share. And briefly, and I promise I will detain neither you nor the House with my contribution today, although this matter is a very important matter. I concur with the member for St. James North who presented the measure, who introduced the measure. I concur with his view that the business of abuse of alcohol and drugs in Barbados is a major problem. He described it as a national problem with serious implications for us socially and economically. I concur wholeheartedly with that view, and in that context can appreciate his attempt, and I join with him in that, to underscore the importance of the role of agencies such as the National Council on Substance Abuse. He gave us a fairly detailed presentation with respect to the role of the NCSA, and he alluded to a number of programs. I thought he may have perhaps served us better by speaking more specifically and perhaps a little bit more broadly on two areas which I consider to be important. One is, if this is a national problem to the extent that it has serious implications for us economically, and I think the question of the measure of the impact of drug abuse and alcohol use on productivity in Barbados would have been an area that perhaps would have deserved a bit more attention in the presentation. Billions of dollars lost annually. If you do the research, billions, and some would suggest hundreds of billions of dollars are lost annually relative to productivity because of the problem of drug abuse and overuse of alcohol. Small developing states can ill afford such loss. We certainly in Barbados cannot afford such loss. We struggle with the massive undertaking of improving our GDP, and we cannot afford to have scourges such as this negatively impact in such a way that the efforts to improve our GDP are negatively impacted. The question of foreign exchange earned, which again is derived from our levels of productivity, comes into question. And so I do, like I said, agree with him that this is a national problem, but we've got to be in a position to measure its impact. That is the impact of the use of drugs and the overuse of alcohol on Barbados's productivity. I do not know that we have been able to do that as yet, and I would want to suggest that that is a serious area of study that we need to undertake if we have not thus far been able to undertake that. There are other issues which are now, even more so than previously, impacting negatively on productivity in Barbados. Transportation, or lack thereof, Mr. Speaker, you know, is the big topic in Barbados today. I had to experience the distressing expressions, or the distressed expressions of a young man at work in a certain facility on one night this week, who said that we definitely must do something in Barbados about the business of transportation, because my boss, he said, does not care how I get to work, but I need to get to work, and to get to work on time, and that has been a challenge for him. And I am sure that that type of situation is replicated multiple times across Barbados today. So anything that is impacting our productivity, especially at this crucial point in our economic development, we need to properly address, be seized of the facts. The facts come via research, And if the research has not been to date done effectively or sufficiently so, we need to make sure that we do that and we have an understanding as to how this scourge is impacting productivity negatively. We have to deal, of course, with the business of drug abuse in the workplace for other reasons. It's not only a question of productivity, it's a question of liability to which employees are exposed, a question of liability to which companies or business entities might be exposed when once employees are given to abuse of either alcohol or other drugs whose use might be prohibited in Barbados. We have to deal with this. Of course, we applaud those business entities that are introducing the kind of regimes that address this problem in the workplace. We applaud those companies that are introducing programs to respond to the specter of rising drug abuse in the workplace. But I believe if we do really feel strongly that it is a national problem to the extent as expressed by the minister, supported by my own view, if we feel that it is a national problem to that extent, then the state cannot allow business entities on their own necessarily to try to address this problem. This is not a problem which is being thrown up by the workplace operations necessarily itself or by company policy. This is a societal problem manifesting itself in the workplace. And if it is to that extent, as we say, a national problem, then perhaps there's scope for the state to consider how best or better we might be able to assist companies in treating to the scourge of drug use or drug abuse at the workplace and during work time or by its employees. I know the government has for a number of years had a program of assistance to persons working in the public service who were in some way distressed or troubled for whatever reason. I think it's an employee assistance program where there was a contract for services with network services. You may be aware of that, Mr. Speaker, yourself. And it's that type of thing perhaps that can be extended to provide some incentives further for companies to feel strongly that we must address this as a national problem. Not just dismiss or discipline an employee, but address the problem because it will manifest itself at company A, at company B, at company C, because it's a national problem which threatens workplace viability and increases exposure, liability exposure for companies and so forth and so on. The other issue of importance in terms of my own concerns would be the extent to which we have measured the impact of drug use or drug abuse in relation to youth deviance, especially in the schools, deviant behavior in our school system. I heard it being intimated earlier today that this problem exists even at the primary level schools in Barbados, and my own awareness suggests that it does. But to a far extent in the secondary school system, to what extent is it contributing to the deviant behavior that we're seeing? I do not think that to date as a state, even at this stage in our development, we have properly analyzed and assessed and researched the reasons why we have this level of youth deviant behavior and what ought to be strong responses to that phenomenon in Barbados today. But it would be my assumption that abuse of drugs plays a significant role in conducing to that type of behavior, and perhaps part of the role of the ministry through an agency like NCSA would be trying to establish the links between the use of abuse of drugs and the socially deviant behavior that we're seeing coming from our young people, our school children. It is not a sufficient response to suggest that our children are possessed of demons. That was said from these honorable halls, that our children, people's children, are possessed of demons. Now, I do not know that that is the product of proper analysis. I do not know that that is the product of proper inquiry or any type of research. I really think it is a strong indictment, more so against those who would say it or advocate it than against those who are accused of being possessed, or the parents who produced them and led them perhaps to that possession. So it's not a sufficient response to say that. We want to condemn that in clear terms. Coming from a church perspective, I do believe in that phenomenon of demon possession, but I do not think that that is the problem which we are confronted with in terms of the behavior, the ill behavior of our young people in Barbados today, certainly not in our schools. We've got to respond to that, but the adequate and proper response is not to say that they're possessed of demons. Having said that, if I'm to be fully honest, Mr. Speaker, it is not a sufficient response either to set parents against teachers in the Barbados school system. We have to be very guarded and prudent with respect to the comments we make. That comment about demons was ill-advised, totally uninformed, and fully unkind. That comment that if they strike your children, it's against the law, call the police, carry them to court, or whatever the effect of it was, I don't think was timely and sufficiently appropriate to the moment, because we have tensions already existing. We have tensions already existing at the level of our school system between teachers and parents. You do not want to give parents a further sense of license to do nonsense and to confront teachers. You do not want to add to the stress of teachers, and you do not want to encourage children in behavior which is undesirable. So I think though that comment may not be as extreme in its folly as the previous one, I think we can encourage people to observe the law without expressing ourselves in tones which would cause people to act otherwise than that which we desire that they should do. And I feel fairly strongly about that. We don't want to add to the stress of teachers, and we don't want to give a further sense of license to misguided parents, and we do not want children to feel that they can find comfort in the words of anyone who would suggest that they're not to be disciplined. I'm not trying to say that that was a suggestion. I was just saying we have to be very careful with the choice of our words, especially in these times, because people receive signals sometimes which unintentionally we send signals which we don't ourselves intend to send. The minister mentioned that the NCSA is faced with a situation of limited complement of staff. We understand that. I don't share the view of the member of St. Michael's South, my honourable friend, who suggests that we need to have a larger staff complement. I agree with him that the mandate needs to be reviewed and expanded, and a greater measure of relevance can be attached to it. But I believe we can get to the goal that he's setting before us without necessarily increasing the staff. What we have to do, and I think he came close to saying that, we have to incorporate the support of elements from the community and other groups and the spirit of volunteerism, because this is a problem which is not intractable, but we've got to put our hands to the plow, and it is not a wound that will heal itself, Mr. Speaker. We need a physician, and that physician must be the national effort of all of us pooling our collective resources. So the answer may not be in a larger NCSA, it could be in a revised role of the NCSA, but with an understanding that many of us need more so to be encouraged to be on board in the undertaking. I am fully supportive of the program of the National Council of Substance Abuse. I think they've done well in Barbados over the years with limited resources. I know that government's purse is constrained at this time in the context of an IMF program, but things like this, when it comes to social and human development and threats to our economic well-being, we've got to be very careful that we provide the necessary funding and other resources so that the job could be more effectively done. That, Mr. Speaker, is my brief contribution for today, and I will make no reference to Project Soft.
Honourable member for Christchurch West Central.
I rise certainly to give my little intervention in support of this amendment to the Act, certainly to change the ministers and certainly the mandate to fall squarely under the remit of the Minister of Home Affairs, a member of Parliament for St. James North. Mr. Speaker, when we are talking about substance abuse, my definition, Mr. Speaker, we are talking about the excessive use of a substance to have not only harmful but psychological effects on the body. But Mr. Speaker, sir, and I must make special reference to the good book, the Bible, and the book of Proverbs, and both Proverbs and Galatians, which speak the fact that anything done in excess is harmful to the body. And Mr. Speaker, recognizing this, of course, we recognize that anything used in terms of substances in excess can have a harmful effect on the body, both psychologically and physically. But Mr. Speaker, the conversation has to lend itself not only to drug abuse, but it must speak to drug dependency. And there must be a clear understanding that we, as a small society, must start using the right terms. Dependency refers to specifically two characteristics or two categories. That is tolerance and withdrawal. Mr. Speaker, it speaks to the fact that after you use a drug continuously, the body, through its biochemical mechanisms, start to resist the effects of that drug. That is tolerance. And withdrawal speaks to the fact that after you stop using the product, there's a group of symptoms or syndrome that is involved or characterize the loss of usage of this drug. And I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, I would love to see one day when we can change the National Council of Substance Abuse to the National Council of Substance Dependency. Because the problem we have in Barbados is a problem of substance dependency. And I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, oftentimes we see our young people, those in the dawn of their lives, those impressionable young people involved in drug usage. And they are finding all types of ingenious ways and methods to be using all types of drugs. Gone are the days where cigarettes and marijuana was the drug of choice. We now hear about lean, the street name for codeine, linctus, and Sprite. And when this drug first came about in the 1990s, Mr. Speaker, sir, it was first introduced by a rapper, because this is the American way of our Barbadian life. It was introduced by a rapper by the name of Pimp C. And Pimp C, I don't know if he was named Pimp C because he was the first person to introduce codeine and codeine linctus and Sprite. But Pimp C, and I want all these young persons in earshot to know that Pimp C died from cardiac arrest because of the overuse and abuse of this same lean. And then you will hear the youngsters talk about a blackie, another gateway substance that seek to introduce young persons to cocaine and other harmful drugs. And we often hear, Mr. Speaker, now on the streets about Molly, which is another name for ecstasy, the amphetamine derivative. All types of drugs now are on the market. But it begs the question, where are these drugs coming from? And I want to implore the National Council on Substance Abuse, certainly, to look at ways to mitigate the access to these drugs, because they're coming from somewhere. And they're not dropping out the sky, certainly, Mr. Speaker. The access, and while traversing Barbados as a Minister of Youth, I often come in contact with young people. And when I hear a young man told me that, Minister, it is easy to get these products. All you have to do is have some Bitcoin, or you can buy them on the internet. And there are ways of getting them in the country. I am saying it is high time we look to secure our boundaries, because they're getting into this country and they're destroying the lives of our young people. Because the one-time access to these drugs is a conversation we need to have. And we need to support the initiatives of the National Council of concept of substance abuse, certainly, as I said, the concept of dependency, in a way that we allow them to open their arms and their tentacles to touch other organizations. They must be able to work closely with the Customs Department and the Immigration Department and the Postal Department to see how we can identify these products as they come into our markets. Those are the sort of conversation. And then education must play a fundamental role in our fight against drug dependency, where we look at how we can teach programs like drug abuse into our school setting, how we can stimulate those type of conversations at the level of primary school and secondary school, where persons therefore have choices. And that word was used as part of one of the songs I wrote. But I'm saying that persons must be able to understand that there are alternatives to drug use. And alternatives refer to the life skill programs that we teach in school as it relates to how we as a country will deal with bullying, how we will deal with cyberbullying, because with the use of technology, there are all forms of peer pressure mechanisms. And how we will deal with that. In the same way, Mr. Speaker, we are saying to our young people that we are going to provide a safe and productive space for them to become successful citizens. We have to make sure we put in place courses and certainly measures at the secondary and primary school level to ensure that access to drugs become a thing of the distant past. And I want to give the country, certainly in this August chamber, my calm assurance that I will do everything in my ministry to ensure that there are other mechanisms out there. There are other tools that young people can pick up so that they can resolve their conflicts. And they have avenues to vent. And I'm saying that we as a government, we have to commit to ensuring that there is a safe space for our young people. And we have to make sure, and I'm calling on both physicians and pharmacists and persons who are involved in the medical field, to be also aware that there's wanton use of products, benzodiazepines. I often hear persons talk about going to the airport and they have to pop 2 Xanax before you get on the plane. That is also a case of drug dependency. So it doesn't only affect our young people and those at the bottom of the spectrum, but those in affluent society as well. Because, and I see the Member of Parliament for St. Philip North looking at me in acknowledgement, it is the most difficult thing to treat persons who are hooked on benzodiazepines and those products, medicated drugs. As I said before, anything that can alter the biochemistry of the body and used in a wanton way can have a harmful effect, and it can lead to drug dependency. And that's the basis for this conversation we are having. Because drug dependency doesn't know age, it does not recognize your economic status, it certainly doesn't recognize your neighborhood, your community. Drug dependency goes across the whole geography of this country and certainly the world. And when we are talking about drug dependency, we also have to look at drug usage as it relates to our sportsmen. One of the things we can be recognized for as a country is our ability to produce sportsmen and women, cricketers, jockeys. Oftentimes you hear those persons being involved in some type of investigation as it relates to drug use. And many times they're not even aware that these products are banned because they can be found in simple food products. Nicotine, caffeine, sympathomimetics, those drugs that are found in chocolate bars and energy products. Those are the type of conversation and education programs we need so that persons that abuse these products know full well this is what you're getting into and these are the outcomes. And that is the wider conversation we need to have as a country. And I want to agitate the National Council of Substance Dependency, as they call it that, because it's really dependency that we're speaking. We're having a conversation about tolerance and withdrawal. And I want to encourage that organization, certainly, that has done an amazing job, to open their arms to reach the other ministries, and certainly don't operate in silos, because there's the Ministry of Youth, which I'm responsible for. There's the Ministry of Health, because it is a health problem. I heard the Minister of Maritime, certainly the Member of Parliament for the South, spoke of St. Michael South, spoke of what he referred to as drug-dependent persons, that was paroles, that's the layman term. But those same persons, when they have an episode and end up at the hospital, who fits the bill? It is an effect on our economic standing. It's a cost attached to it. So it's not only a psychological price that we pay, it's not only a social price that we pay, but it is an economical price, and one that we as a country, who certainly is now looking to return to even keel under the management of the Member of Parliament for St. Michael Northeast, can't afford to be spending money in this way. So I am inviting the Minister, certainly of Home Affairs, to encourage your board to reach out to the other ministries, because we don't operate in silos, and there must be relationships across the board so we can mitigate and certainly bury the scourge of substance abuse in this country. But substance abuse, as I said, is far-reaching. As I say, simple medication. Oftentimes you hear older persons in this country speak of they need to go home and take Panadols. And they take it inadvertently, whether they have pain or not. That is the situation we are faced with. Drugs are abused across the length and breadth of this country, and I'm saying that there is greater need for us to educate our people. And I want to state categorically today that when we have the conversation about marijuana and its use, and I want the butt to start here today, because persons are talking about marijuana and medical marijuana. I want this chamber to know, certainly, and the rest of Barbados, to understand that medical marijuana is totally and completely different from recreational marijuana. It is prepared different, it comes from a different seed, and it is used for different purpose. Medical marijuana specifically acts on receptors in our body for certain indications, whether it is pain management, whether as an adjunct for the treatment of HIV and cancer. And from the 14th century, we heard about its usage as a poultice that relates to bites, mosquito bites, etc. So when you hear about medical marijuana, there must be a clear distance from what we call recreational marijuana. And we have always said as a government that that conversation will come with the use of recreational marijuana at a different time, and the people will be involved in that conversation. But medical marijuana, Mr. Speaker, sir, has potential not only in terms of health, but for the economy of this country. And it's certainly something that we as a government will be looking forward to. And I am willing, ready to support my member colleague, the Minister of Agriculture, whenever that opportunity comes. Because like any other product, I think that we have to recognize the full worth of any medicinal plant. And I want to implore the Member of Parliament, certainly for St. Philip South, to go with all the gusto and all the connective tissue of his and the sinew of his being to ensure that that become a reality. But, Mr. Speaker, sir, when you talk about the effects on society, you're talking about the effects on family life. Because drug use have a serious effect on the way of life of our family, the disruption of families. And when you have persons involved in maladaptive patterns of behavior, that where they put the use of drug higher on the ladder of importance than other things that we regard as a society as the most important thing and the most important function in their life, then we know we have a problem. For instance, a man may consider sitting down home using chalice, because that's what the news now are. What a person would call a hooker. I wouldn't call it by its other name because it's spelled the same way, but Mr. Speaker, me and you don't know about that other thing. But a hooker, I won't call it the other name. But I'm saying that when a person stay home and spend majority of their time using a chalice, rather than being engaged in wholesome activities that would line to them supporting themselves and their family. Important engagements, Mr. Speaker. That is when we know that they're under the control and the siege of drug use. And that is when society has to take a look at itself and recognize that we have a serious problem, because that is what is happening. We have a problem where the important things of society are being put on the wayside, and where drug use has become the new norm. And I'm saying, when persons talk about drug use, they always often talk about nicotine and marijuana and the rest. But we have the new improved drugs on the market, the mollies and those types. Those are the ones that we have to seek to control, that is influencing the minds of our young people and certainly taking control of their bodies. And they're doing every single thing under the sun to ensure that they have this euphoric moment. This once in a lifetime moment. That I'm saying to you, Mr. Speaker, based on the nature of dependency itself and tolerance, you will never achieve that first feeling. And the body does not permit itself in its biochemical way to achieve that first high. So what happens is that you use an increased amount of drug to get this same high or this first feeling, but it will never happen. And that is the problem. So they seek to do every single thing under the sun, illegal or otherwise, in order to achieve this feeling, in order to satisfy this aid. And that's where the problem lies in society. So oftentimes you find that substance abuse and substance dependency has a direct relationship to other illegal activities. And you, as august gentleman who goes before the courts, will understand what I'm talking about, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, there is a problem, a fundamental problem in society. I am glad that there are measures in place, certainly, that the National Council on Substance Dependency, that they are working assiduously to ensure that not only the message is out.
I remember you have changed the name of the organization. You have.
By the nature of the organization can be...
I remember you have changed it without law, not within the confines of the law, sir.
The national, for the August Chamber, sir, is the National Council of Substance Abuse. But abuse by itself cannot define what is happening in this country. So it's the National Council of Substance Abuse / dependency.
But sir, with the greatest respect, there's been no amendment in this chamber to change any names, sir.
The National Council of Substance Abuse, sir. But I'm saying
that's the correct name as per law.
Per law, as per law. And I'm saying to the Minister certainly of Home Affairs that in the not too distant future, that I'm suggesting a name for the minister that he can look at, because we definitely do have a problem. And I'm saying that access and availability fundamentally is something that we have to look at as a society going forward. We certainly have to look at the economy and the impacts of the economy, the health system, and I'm sorry, the Minister of Health and Wellness would attest to the fact that it is a serious strain on the health system in this country. We have to look at forming our relationships with international agencies as well. There's the Organization of American States, which has a bilateral evaluation mechanism that deals with drug dependency and substance abuse. We have to look at to have relationships with the Psychiatric Society, because we're recognizing that a lot of substance abuse lead to suicide and other disgraces as it relates to mental health. And these are the things we have to look at it in a holistic way, because drug abuse hits every single corner, nook and cranny of Barbados. It does not recognize heights and terraces. It doesn't recognize those at the bottom of the spectrum. It has its wings across every single spectrum of this society. And I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, sir, it's something that we have to look at. We have to work assiduously with the National Council of Substance Abuse, and we have to ensure that we wrestle it. We certainly put it behind bars for what it's worth, because it is something that can destroy a small society like us. And Mr. Speaker, in closing, because I said I want to make a short intervention, we have to encourage our sportsmen and women certainly to become fully aware of not only the drugs that are given to them by the professionals, but their diet and the food supplements that they take, because they have a responsibility to themselves certainly to ensure that whatever they take in their body does not go against any international laws as it relates to their sporting organization. And Mr. Speaker, I also want to commend the Attorney General certainly for the drug court that has become now a reality, and it's certainly something that we can look at. And I am also imploring the Minister of Home Affairs to ensure that the NCSA work closely with that organization. In his early discourse, we recognize that there is the Verdum House, and I would like certainly for this to be expanded. We certainly heard about the Maria Holder organization in St. John, which certainly looks after the needs for persons who are involved in drug abuse and drug use as it relates to the women, because the women forms a fundamental part of this society. And any government who is serious about its business of taking care of the citizens of this country must seek to look after its women. And I'm certainly, as a minister and as part of this government, I would certainly like to applaud the minister for ensuring that there is a safe haven for women as it relates to drug use, because we understand that they are vulnerable at the point in time, recognizing that a lot of women are abused when they are taking drugs and stuff like that. And we recognize that as a society, we can never be misogynistic as in our views as it relates to women, and certainly we would take care of those fair folk. But Mr. Speaker, sir, the society must take a stand, and we must understand that we have a clear mandate to look after the citizens. We have a mandate as it relates to those in the dawn of their lives, the ones that I am certainly responsible for as Minister of Youth. We have a mandate as it relates to the disabled community, the most vulnerable community, those in the twilight of their years. And I assure the Minister of St. Thomas, the Member of Parliament for St. Thomas, will speak after me, and she would have certainly met representation for those elderly folk, because they are involved in drug usage, as I said, especially the prescription drugs that they take in a phantom way. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to applaud the minister. I want to commend him for bringing this change, this amendment to the Act, and I certainly want to invite all Barbadians to come on board in this effort, this important effort of trying to treat the scourge of substance abuse and to wrestle it to the ground. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for St. Philip North.
Speaker, two things I want to say. First of all, I want to wish a big happy birthday to the Honourable Member for St. James North. If I could sing, if I weren't hoarse, I would sing for you today. And the other thing, I'm speaking in the afternoon, but I wanted to offer my well wishes to the Class 4 students who did the exam today, and I hope it was successful for all of them. I want to add my voice to this National Council for Substance Abuse Amendment, and it probably is fitting that I follow the Honourable Member for Christ Church West Central. I don't know if I will be repeating a bit of what he says. It could be a case of great minds think alike or fools seldom differ. Not so sure. I will go with great minds. Let me start by saying I will admit that although I am aware of the genetic predisposition to addiction and substance abuse. That at first in my medical journey as a doctor, my tolerance level was low, I will admit it. It's one thing to read it in a book about abuse and addiction. It's another thing to live it and see people living it. But over time and over the years, I have learned to listen a little more, to talk a little more, and to act a little more. And over time, my tolerance level is much improved. And the stigma and the bias that I probably had, if I must admit it, towards people, alcoholics and nicotine addicts, etc., is much, much better than it was before. And I want to extend this to the general public in saying that we need to get rid of the bias. We need to get rid of the stigma associated with addiction and substance abuse. I can remember as far back, I would have been in school, a little girl, Dr. Gill, I think the Honourable Member for St. James South, spoke about the initiative with respect to cigarette smoking. And Dr. Gill, I dare say, did a fantastic job in decreasing the numbers of cigarette smokers we have in our society. Unfortunately, it would seem that marijuana took the place of cigarettes in a lot of cases, unfortunately. But the problem with marijuana smoking or marijuana smokers, or however they choose to use it, whether they eat it or do it in tea, is that they fail to understand the possible and probable effects of marijuana on the body. Back in my time, a lot of textbooks would tell you that it was non-addictive, but these people had not had the opportunity that I would have had, or maybe the previous member that spoke before me, in walking through the psychiatric hospital in Black Rock and realizing that many of the patients in Black Rock are there as a result of marijuana-induced psychosis, which the general public does not know about. But I can relate to this when I see last year the 16-year-old gentleman that came into my office after smoking marijuana and could tell me about all his family and a whole society and a whole neighborhood living under the sea. I could tell you about the grandson of a patient of mine that came into my office as high as a kite, as they say, and proceeded to the bathroom and brought my mirror that could have been my face. I could speak about these things. But generally, the young people that use marijuana, and some old, are convinced that they do nothing. So let me even mention now that I don't think we quite understand the seriousness of the drug use and abuse. And let me clear it by saying I am a fan of Buju Banton. I admire his music. But when we got to society that more or less romanticizes a gentleman coming out of prison after spending a decade of incarceration on drug charges, when on his, long walk to freedom, I'm not so sure from where, but when we can romanticize that and greet somebody like this at the airport and give them one of the biggest concerts, let me say again, I love his music, but we need to change the perspective of our young people with respect to our heroes and heroines. We got to change the focus. Yes, there are the Bob Marleys of the world, and I love him too, but the perspective of young people, they use him as a prime example that marijuana does nothing. Not everybody can benefit from the clarity, I assume, that he exhibited from marijuana use. Not many people can belt out the lyrics that he did. In fact, the majority can't. But we need to change the focus and move to different role models, in a sense, different role models. We have a man like Mr. Banton, if you do put Mr. in front of that stepped out of prison, and now I'm sure he's a virtual millionaire. We need to change the focus of who we look up to for our young people. With respect to the marijuana issue, I know we are bringing legislation with respect to medical marijuana, but it's hard to talk about the NCSA and not mention marijuana use and abuse. And I think the issue is we need to educate, change the perspective of the public. The truth is, in talking to people, the general belief among young people is that with the advent of medical marijuana, the rest of the marijuana world will become free and they could smoke happily and sell what they like and buy what they like. We need to educate and change this reality. The other areas I want to talk about that the honourable member that spoke before me spoke about too, alcohol abuse. This is a big area in Barbados. This is often overlooked. Many families have suffered from, whether it be daddy or mommy, using alcohol. It has affected children. People have been spending paychecks before it could even get home. It's a burden on the workforce. We have to bear this in mind that alcohol, and I know the NCSA has been working assiduously on it, but alcohol is a big issue for substance abuse in Barbados. It's hard when, as a doctor, I have seen quite a few patients, I won't say several, but a few patients. 1 minute you're telling them you need to stop drinking, it's affecting your body, and the next minute you're accompanying the police to issue a certificate of death when you find them in an alley, bled out from a stomach ulcer or otherwise. It's hard to watch that when you work so hard with them. That is some of my experience. So sometimes I fail to understand, and I'm not necessarily talking about this party, I'm talking about parties from way back. Why, with this knowledge, with the pushing of NCSA, we sit down here and back them and everything, and yet we as ministers or MP or candidates are encouraged to go into the rum shops and buy drinks. This is separate and distinct from going into rum shops and greeting constituents and talking to constituents. I fail to understand, and it goes way above my head, why we are encouraged to go into the rum shops and buy drinks with the fellas. It makes no sense. I feel that if we speak something in here, it must be the same that we speak out here. These are things that we need to address. And I, for one, will stand behind the NCSA with respect to alcohol abuse and use. Like the previous speaker too, I agree. Substance abuse goes way beyond the usual cigarette smoking and alcohol and marijuana and cocaine. We see substance abuse every day with respect to over-the-counter drugs. He mentioned things like codeine linked to us. Now you can learn anything on the internet. If you want to make drugs, go on YouTube. But I'm happy to say that the Pharmacy Council, of which I'm a part of, are putting measures in place now that we will move these medications, these drugs from the reach of the normal general public. We're taking steps to do that because they're dangerous. Yes, they're over-the-counter or were over-the-counter, but they're dangerous. They're dangerous to children, they're dangerous to adults, and we have to remember that that is a part of the substance abuse. Prescription drugs. It is one thing, as the member said, to use something like Xanax when you go on a flight. Most people don't fly every week, every month. Most people don't even fly every year. That is not addiction. I beg to differ. But it's another thing, and most people think it's a young people issue, this abuse. When you see elderly people, let me take you back. When I was a young doctor at the Warren's Polyclinic, my first experience with this addiction in the elderly, I had one of the sweetest looking old ladies come into my office. I was taking over a clinic for another doctor. And I noted that previously she had a prescription for one of the sleeping pills, what my friend would like to call benzodiazepines. And she asked me for a repeat prescription. I looked back in the notes and I realized she was on this thing forever. And I said, ma'am, I won't be able to write it for you. You had it long enough, time to withdraw or at least decrease the dose. That was the first time in my career I was cursed, as Bijan said, cussed out, all kind of colors. And it solidified what abuse means. I was not angry at her because she had no control over it. I had another old gentleman, he went to his grave being addicted to this. That being said, we need to have the support of the pharmacists, the doctors, the shop owners with respect to this. People, pharmacy shop or doctor shop, there needs to be communication between the medical professionals so that we could do something about this scourge. Energy drinks. It's not on the usual list, but people have died. I don't know if I can mention the names, I won't, but we know what they are. People have found invented ways to mix the energy drinks with alcohol, not knowing that they might have a cardiac problem, not knowing that they may be on medication. And this is not a young people thing. I have seen this with people that want to stay awake at night, students who want to stay awake at night for exams, people in the rum shop that just don't want to go home, and it's a serious, serious, serious issue. Maybe the NCSA could add things like this to their mandate. I'm happy, I was honorary of it, my bad, when the Honourable Member for St. James North mentioned the Maria Holder House. Happy about that. Pity is underused, but the truth is women were a sector of the society when it came to drug abuse and use. Either we were unaware of the amount of it, or we gave it little attention. And I'm happy to see that we're doing something about it. But as he said, the problem comes when mothers have to leave their children at home to do a drug program. There must be some way to get mothers to stay at home and yet carry through the treatment programs. I'm not sure what it will be, but there must be some way. It's one thing when a father is addicted to drugs or alcohol, but it's a whole different ballgame, and many people will agree with me, when a mother is affected. Honourable Speaker, you're smiling, but it's true. The woman tends to look after the children and gets them ready for school and cooks and everything. It's harder, in my mind, stand to correction. But when a woman has these issues, it's even harder on a family as it stands. So I think, and I agree with some of the members who spoke, that maybe there needs to be more treatment centers. There is still a stigma about going to the psychiatric hospital for treatment or for tests. The truth is, and that's the reality, there is still a stigma. It would be good to bring it out, maybe to somehow merge it into the polyclinics. This is just a suggestion. Bring it out into the communities, make people more aware of it. Sometimes if you have something in your face all the time, the stigma disappears. Make people more aware of it, that people can actually come forward and be treated. The truth is, with an addict, you can't make somebody go for treatment. They have to want to go to treatment. But the more education that we put out there, the more information we put out there, you will have people responding. Education needs to continue, and I'll be humble on it. Everybody needs to be educated on drug use and abuse and now the medicinal marijuana. Doctors, pharmacists, patients, mothers. We are concentrating on the children in schools, and kudos with that. But we need to include guardians, parents, grandparents, because these are the ones that are dealing with these children on a day-to-day basis. You really can't leave them out. But I am glad that there are programs in school, but we need to extend it into the family so that we can have some measure of control here. Churches, church leaders. And children are smart. They find ways to get around parents and grandparents. And doctors. I met a young gentleman a couple years ago. And he came, the mother came in quite, what the young people say, screw. And she wanted to have drug testing done on the boy. And Mr. Speaker, he came down to tears. I talking about tears and mucus and the whole works. And he had me convinced that he was not using drugs, but I went ahead against my own judgment and did the test, and it came back positive for marijuana. So we can all be fooled. Let's face it, we can all be fooled. So education is paramount when it comes to fighting this scourge. And with that, Mr. Speaker, all I want to say is that we need to get over the stigma, we need to get over the judging, we need to listen a little more, we need to talk a little more, we need to do a little more. I want to thank the NCSA for the wonderful work over the years. I am assuming some people in here are associated with it. Yes, I want to thank you, congratulate you, and encourage you to continue to do the same work even better and beyond your scope. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for St. Philip West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to, like my colleagues, congratulate the NCSA for the work that they've done. so far. I would have, in another life, had a long association with that organization. And I think to this debate, I want to bring another perspective. We all know the seriousness of drug addiction and drug dependency. I don't think I have to go into it from that point of view. But I think oftentimes when we get into debates like these, we often miss the human element that is involved. And I just want to draw a picture for some of my colleagues and those persons listening. I have witnessed in my life drugs destroy families, destroy homes, destroy work colleagues, friends, and also bring people to almost subhuman levels. And I don't know if anyone here, you sir probably would have, but I've had the privilege, I can call it a privilege, of being able to walk through areas in Barbados and in other places with a social work background, and as part of my training to witness a lot of things that oftentimes I get a little emotional about when you got to talk about them. But imagine this, that you can see young girls in particular, and I'm going to talk about girls, young girls reduced to being, it even goes beyond sex toys. It goes to being less than human, reducing themselves to some of the most, I don't know what kind of treatment, I don't find an adjective to describe the kind of treatment that meted out to them, all in an effort to get that hit, to get that other drug. But what is worse is that you understand the problem that they have. But what I don't understand, and which I think even on my dying bed I probably will never understand it, is what kind of human being helps to subscribe to this kind of behavior. The persons who, and again, I get talk plain, the persons who indulge in the things like the golden showers, the persons that indulge in things like fecal matter on people, other human beings, this kind of madness. And for some people, it's a joke. For other people, it's just a normal way of behavior. Or bringing people down to have acts like bestiality and all these kind of things based on a person's addiction to drugs. And rather than help, you indulge in pushing that person further down into the depths of despair. Now, let's not fool ourselves. These are not just things that you see on social media. These are things that are happening right underneath our noses here in Barbados on a regular basis. And somebody somewhere has to be bold enough to talk about it. Because you're treating people as subhuman. And you're not helping, but you're creating further problems for the society. And God knows that where we find ourselves, small populations, bad economies, we could go on and on and on. We cannot afford to lose human capital at all. Because each person that you lose to drugs is a potential prime minister, a potential inventor, a potential somebody that come up with some new economy or something that can help us. But we'll never see the potential come to fruition because of what? Because of drugs. And so I totally would support anything that can be done to help the NCSA to improve the programs that they have been working with for a number of years now, and any measures that we need to take, and I stress on the word need to take, to give them the opportunity to do the best job that they can do possible to save our people from this scourge. You know, it is for me, it is very interesting that we are having these conversations at this point in time. But there's something else that I want to bring to the table. And that is the whole issue of psychotropic drugs. Because oftentimes we talk a lot about the ones that are out there in the streets, but nobody wants to get into the conversations where you have these drugs being manufactured outside of this country, as most of these dangerous ones are, manufactured out of here, being sold to our people as being able to correct mental illness. Now, somebody will got to explain to me, how on God's earth can you have a drug to correct a mental illness, but at the bottom of the advertising for the same drug, it says, if you get suicidal tendencies after taking this drug, stop. Now, Mr. Speaker, I mean, this is a kind of mindset that we in this side of the world, and I'm not going to only speak about, but we in the Caribbean have to be seriously concerned about. Because one, we do not do the science, we do not make these drugs, but our doctors and other persons endorse these things, knowing full well that it has these types of warnings, like, for lack of a better word, on them. Now, I mean, I believe that most people can work out that anytime at all you see a bottle and it marked poison, you're not going to go and drink it and hope for the best. So why would you take the chance with these types of drugs coming into the Caribbean, and people and doctors prescribing them for people? This for me is something that needs to be looked at, and I hope that the NCSA would be given the teeth to look into these particular types of drugs that come in, because they're coming in legally, but they have the potential, just as the ecstasy or any of the other recreational drugs that you can think about, to destroy lives. And I'm very, very passionate about that in particular, because what it is another form of exploitation, where somebody somewhere else does not care very much about what the results are for territories like ours, as long as they can make the dollars, the almighty dollar that they're looking for. And I believe that it is up to us, and again, NCSA at the forefront of it, to protect ourselves from these types of, I don't want to use that word, but not so good people, because they do not have our best interests at heart. What I would also want to see happen is that the other ministries, and I think the Honourable Minister for Christchurch East, I think it is?
West Central?
West Central. Made the point that we too have to become part and parcel of the fight. You know, Mr. Speaker, in sport, very early on, I made it clear that I was not going to be very supportive of persons doping when it comes to sport. This is a problem that I encountered very early in coming into this ministry, and it is something, again, that needs serious attention. Because one of the things that we've got to understand is that a lot of these drugs that athletes get exposed to are coming through our ports as legitimate drugs, you know. But again, oftentimes, because it doesn't affect us directly, we pay little or no attention to these things. And I believe that the time has come where we must seriously consider much stricter, and this will be for the minister also, much stricter penalties for the trafficking aspect of drugs. Not so much for the persons that are using, because we understand that those sometimes our medical problems can lead to these things. But at the end of the day, it's all about choices. You know, people choose oftentimes what it is they want to do, what they want to get involved in, and then sometimes, as I said before, with medical positions, people get addicted to certain things. We know that. But I think that at the point where the recreational drugs are concerned, we need to sometimes look outside of our general area, outside of this region, and look and see what are the measures that other people are taking. I remember years ago having a conversation with someone, and I think it was somewhere in Southeast Asia, one of those places out there, where, you know, on the plane going in, captain on the plane was saying to people, if you have any sort of drugs on you now, this is time to get rid of it. Because when this plane lands, anything else after that, you are caught with these things, is death. And I think, I'm not suggesting that we have to get that radical with it, but I think that we have to take this a lot more serious. You know, it pained me some years ago, and I'm glad I find myself in this position now where I can lay hold of Barbados, know how I felt about it. There was a man caught here in Barbados with cocaine. Anyway, into prison. And when this gentleman came out of prison, he went back to England and wrote a fantastic book and made a lot of money off it, talking about his experience in prison in Barbados. Now, I smiled then as I smile now, because nobody, by nobody, spoke about what he was doing in terms of trying to destroy our children and our people. But he went back to England to be a hero. And people, and I'm going to use Barbadian parlance, enough, bought his book. But nobody speaks about the trail of destruction that he left as a consequence of his actions in this country. And these are things that we got to get very serious about. Because oftentimes, what we do is, and I think the Honourable Member for St. Philip North spoke about it, we castigate the persons who use the substances. And we ostracize them, and we can make all sorts of comments about their inability to take responsibility for their lives and all of these grand things. But when it comes to the persons who are actually in the forefront of delivering illegal drugs to them, it seems 99.9% of the time that we are very forgiving, or in some instances, we believe that they are heroes. And that has to stop. Because if you fight a war and you build weapons, you kill people. And if you bring drugs into a country to give to people, you kill people. You can't be a hero. not by any stretch of the imagination. So, Mr. Speaker, I won't take up too much of the time because I know there are other members who want to get in on this particular one, but I just want to say that I give my full support to any measures at all that this government can take to improve and to help the NCSA to carry out its functions. I think I would have to agree with the Honourable Leader of the Opposition that I don't think that what we need now is more staffing. I think in terms of the messaging and things like that, social media is at our disposal. It's something that we didn't have early in the late 80s or early 90s to the extent. And today we can reach people. We can reach people through social media because not so positive things reach them every day and they pass it on from one another, one person to the other, and I believe that messages coming out from the NCSA can be passed around in that way. But the education from the primary school level is important. Oftentimes we want to target older children, probably from secondary school and up, but we've got to get real. In a society as small as this, children are exposed to all sorts of things from a very early age. And so I believe the conversations now must start within our primary schools to at least give children an idea of what is out there in terms of drugs. And people are hiding them in all sorts of things, putting them in sweets, and all these things are happening in our society. And we need now to not look at our children as just babies and just, they have brains and they will understand. But we need to be bold enough to have those conversations, and you fashion it in a way that is easy for them to digest. It doesn't need big words and a lot of jargon and all that, but it has to be truthful and it has to be heartfelt. And I think by doing that, and again, one of the things that we've not done well is to show people the examples. I guess sometimes we probably might feel a little bit uncomfortable showing people the examples of what could happen to you from using drugs. And I think seeing is believing. And I'm a firm believer that if children from an early age can see those examples rather than hide them, but they can see them, they would think twice before getting themselves involved. So, Mr. Speaker, I fully support any measures to help NCSA, and with those few words, I oblige.
Honourable Member for St. Thomas.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I too would wish to add my congratulations to the staff of the NCSA, not only the current staff, but indeed the staff previously, who had done excellent work under the leadership of some very distinguished persons who are no longer there, but they had set the platform for what we are doing today. And I'm
Honourable
sure
Member, you're congratulating me then? Am I hearing? You're congratulating me then, Honourable Member?
I did not want, sir.
Oh, I just asked a question.
Your Honor,
it was a rhetorical question, not meant to be answered.
Yes, sir, and I do thank you as well with your social background. Your background is social work and the distinguished work you would have played not only there, but in other institutions. I'm sure that your guidance would have been a good barometer to help to guide those who have taken us thus far with the NCSA, and indeed the current staff and others who work with them as volunteers. I am really very proud to be associated with the institution, knowing of the excellent work that has come from the department, and of course will continue to be coming from it, especially now that this legislation, sir, has been amended. I heard the Honourable Leader for the Opposition speak about the teachers and the matter associated with flogging children, and I felt that a lot of what the Honourable Minister said would have been taken out of context in the light that she spoke to the legislation in the Education Act that determines who should flog children. And that was the backdrop from which she spoke in association with a child in particular that was disabled, who was so badly bruised and beaten, and you could see all the cuts and so on the child's skin because the parents or the guardians or whoever took pictures of it, and that was the backdrop. But the minister never said that the senior teachers, as are outlined in the Education Act, should not continue what they have to do. And that there are too many junior teachers who are not chastising in the way that I did, sir, and you and others who have been teachers here. We gave a little slap, and we gave them a turn, stand in the corner. Don't misbehave in here, that kind of thing. But nowadays, some of them are really brutally beating children. And I think that was the context in which the minister spoke, according to what I understood when we were here in the well. And I would just like to encourage teachers to be a little more tolerant, those who seem to want to be chastised in that way, because it's not easy to treat the children in this day and age. And we don't even know if some of them, who teachers have to be so active in trying to control and to train them well, we don't even know if some of those are also on drugs. Some of them are from environments where there's a lot of anger and bitterness and fighting and lots of life, and so some of those children have had no counseling at all. And some teachers are also from some of those environments. They have their own issues. Husbands are beating them, but there's nobody to talk with. Or wives have left them, or partners, or they've taken away the children and the males can't see them. So all of us as a people have got stressors of that nature, but I know 99.5% of our teachers are excellent persons who are working with our children. And it is similar as if it were in the politicians. All politicians are not the nicest. All police officers are not the nicest. All lawyers are not the nicest. All priests and pastors are not the nicest. But we keep focusing as Barbadians on the small percentage that cause most of the negativity, and we don't highlight and praise and uplift those who work day and night beyond human call to provide services, books, pencils, clothing, food, free counseling, free lessons, nurturing, all the other things that we can think about. And therefore, I would like to just encourage some of my colleagues of the past to just be careful how they're doing it, because sometimes the law will not be on their sides. And some more lawyers will get big money even if they do nothing in respect of it. I want Mr. Speaker, though, to refer to what is happening here and to really indicate, sir, my support for the amendment to this legislation, and to speak to the projects and the programs that are being aimed towards by the Substance Abuse Board. I know of the residential camp. I had been there at a place right next to the Verdun House. I can't remember the title, in our time as a government, and I know of the excellent work. As a matter of fact, one of my former students is a very forward member of the staff there, and you would know, sir, that my little rubbing shoulders with that member and others would have helped to prepare them for this kind of life as a giving service to the people of this country. So I know the residential camp, I know of Project Soft, the workplace interventions that are very necessary, because a lot of Barbadians live in cocoons. From the time they go home from work, they get caught up in their own business, but nothing happening on the outside or in the village of the community where they live concerns them. I've known now too of their plans with the interventions to target youth at risk in communities. The substance abuse badge, which I think is critical for all those children and individuals and young people who are a part of the Scouts and the Brownies and the Cubs and the cadets and so on, the Pathfinders and others, because that is how we engage them in voluntary service and give them the badges that they have merited as a part of showing off to the rest of the world their engagement in the communities and in activities. I want to commend them for the plans to do the teacher training. And I want to add to that guidance counselors as well. Although they will do the training, sometimes they do not get enough to be able to prepare them as to what is happening within our schools, our homes, and our communities. And that is extremely critical at this time, because we are so caught up in administering the academic side of things at times, we forget that child who had been in the classroom fidgeting all morning long, or falling asleep, or feeling ill, and it's happening almost every day unless we get the training to be able to detect or to investigate what's happening with this child and deal with it in a positive way. Those are children that we will lose from within our various institutions. And I would like to encourage them as well to make contact with the international institutions. There are some institutions that will want to give some funding for technical assistance. There are others like the Maria Holder Trust that will be willing to give funding for other structures and so on. And I want them to continue to work because the prevention and treatment of our people are extremely critical in this area. I want to support the Honourable Member for St. Philip South, who spoke to the messaging, St. Philip West, I beg your pardon, who spoke to the messaging it's through the social media and so, and I want to add to it. Everybody is into the messaging because persons of my elder department are not as proficient on the technology. But when we see billboards, and when we see banners, and especially the feather banners, they send messages and our eyes are attracted to them. That helps us a lot. And I know that the quizzes and the drama and the other aspects of sensitization will help to make a tremendous difference. Now, Mr. Speaker, more in-depth research needs to be done in order to guide the policy and the interventions that are required. And I would wish to indicate that if the University of the West Indies is not yet on board, that the approaches be made for that institution to be an integral part of it. And of course, there are other local and regional institutions that may have already done a lot of testing and investigation, and so that once that information is gathered, then that could be used as a guideline to help us as we go through these serious times in our history that are so different from when I was a little girl that was many, many moons ago, or when I was in the classroom that was more than a quarter of a century ago. Times have changed, and we need to change to suit the times if we are to save humankind for the devastation that we witness every day. So I want to make a call too to the National Council on Substance Abuse for the sharing of that information with the public. In the same way we know how many people have been murdered and how many firearm charges there are, and so we want to know how many persons have been engaged, how much treatment and training has been offered, because that will help us to better understand the role that is being played. And for many more of us, parliamentarian or not citizens, that we can also come on board and tithe our time to lend assistance to the board so that it can be strengthened and we can go to our various communities to be able to make a difference in whatever is happening. And there's nobody else in Barbados beyond priests and politicians that get this kind of attention and respect. And people will be so glad to see a politician rubbing shoulders with them in the villages to be able to treat to those individuals who are impacted upon as a result of the drug abuse or the drug addiction. I also want to say, sir, that the sensitization and education of parents would be most critical. However, too many parents are living in cocoons. They send out their children to school, they give them the nicest, nicely pressed clothing, they give them the food in the lunch boxes, they give them the most expensive telephone or cellular phone, and we send them off to school. But then we don't know who their friends are. We don't know with whom they associate on their way to and from school. We don't know who pick up some of them from school and drop them somewhere else in the bus stand or somewhere else nearest to home. And therefore, our children are impacted upon in a way that unless we are vigilant parents, we don't know. So I made sure when mine was going to school, way back in the Hickeys in St. Andrew, that I searched the bag when he was looking and when he was not. That I questioned everything, and sometimes I turned up unannounced too. And I made sure that I took over the PTA for 5 straight years because I wanted to follow the only child that I had and to make sure that he became the citizen that I expected him to be. And I am thankful, Mr. Speaker, sir, that I have achieved a lot of goals as a result of that. Until one day I saw a little piece of grass in the bag and he was outside playing, and I almost went berserk. And you know, I'm talking many years ago, because he now is as old as most of the honorable members in here. But the point is, I could not understand that when I dug into the bag and I kept the little thing there, I didn't know anything about any drugs either. But you know what? When I made my own juve, it was that the persons on at the school's compound were cutting the grass at school that day, and he went outside with the bag, and something at the thing went in, and it was grass. But the grass from the lawn. And I'm saying, had I not investigated, my mind would have turned, because some parents are even afraid to say anything to their children, because the children are ready to beat them because of the foolish relationship they have with them, that they treat the grown children as though they're their brothers and sisters. No child that I have given birth to will ever be my brother or my sister. And there's nothing that would stop me from chastising them in every possible way, because I am the boss, Mr. Speaker. And parents must be the bosses, meaning in charge of their homes and their children, and monitor them and tell them, you cannot go to any fair in that little nippy this and that, or you cannot go in no pants dropping off your behind, because you are representing me when you go there, you are so-and-so's child. And we have to take control of our homes again, as our parents did. And our parents didn't have any parental training really, except what was handed down to them for generations from their own parents. And they knew when to tell us, if you're going outside or going to church, the dress you're wearing is a little light. Back inside and put on a half petticoat. So many parents are afraid to tell their children what is and what is not. And therefore, I am saying parental training needs to be put on the cards in our schools, and therefore I call on all PTAs. Yes, you have to do the fundraising, but there are other components of training that are required for our parents in order to help them to be able to manage their children. Many of them do not know the shame. Well, let me say the children bring the shame on them eventually, because some of them are in their cocoons, as I said, and others are not aware until the matter comes home to their living rooms as to what is happening with their children. And then they become ashamed, they are in denial, they lack the support systems but don't know how to approach, because they don't want anybody to know their child has been in some way addicted. And of course we have limited facilities to accommodate persons of that nature. I know of Verdon House and the role and the excellent role that it is playing. I know that some of our youth have gone that far with the drug addiction that they are at the psychiatric hospital, and they seek and are given professional assistance. But I think that we need more advocacy to help our parents and our guardians to be able to access the training and access the resources necessary for them to be able to better understand. You know what, Mr. Speaker? I want to commend at this time, highly commend and congratulate the Maria Holder Trust for the Thrive Family Center that was recently opened at the psychiatric hospital to treat adolescents who are also addicted to the drugs. I want to thank them sincerely, and I know of the contribution that they have given as benefactors to the social development of Barbados, and they're not the only ones, but I believe that we need to give praise where praise is due. I know that the Sandy Lane Trust is also doing excellent work in a number of areas. I think so also, Mr. Speaker, sir, that we need to work closer with our parents and guardians. Most of them are out working now as compared with in the past, and many of them are out of touch, and our children are languishing in the communities after school. Many of them are latchkey children, so they go in when they feel like, and they do all kinds of things because there's nobody there to give them proper supervision. All of us must try to put systems in place to ensure that our children are well cared for. And of course, the emphasis of what is happening at the PTA must change, and we must also let them start looking at the technology and the impact it has on our children, the drugs, and get the training, and get the other youth groups and community groups to come in who have got the training, who are taking their time to share the information so that parents get a better understanding as to what is happening. Yes, I want to congratulate those children who wrote the exam today as well, but I believe that our society has now gone to the farthest point in promoting the common entrance ahead of anything else that our children do. Not all children will be early developers. I cannot say that I'm an early developer, but thank God I'm rubbing shoulders with those who went to Harrison College that went straight to sixth form and didn't get put on the third form. I am rubbing shoulders with those from up and down, Your Honor. I am rubbing shoulders with those at the lodge. I'm rubbing shoulders with those who went to Parkinson and so on. I didn't have the access to it, but my mother was not the kind of person who made a difference. Although I had sisters who went to Queen's College and St. Michael's and so, she said, all of you belong to me. And you're getting the privilege I didn't have. Go to school and learn wherever you go. And that helped to motivate me. My personality was different. Therefore, sir, I am here today rubbing shoulders with all these distinguished ladies and gentlemen. And therefore, if the children out there can understand, I did not go any farther than full form. But I'm here today, they know they have potential too. So they cannot let anybody, with the irony of insults and criticisms, and they don't see, and they come from this place in the Orleans, and the next place in the Vault Road, and the next place in the Pine, and the next place in St. John. It is wrong. And it is not only people and children doing it, some teachers are doing it too, much to the sadness of the profession. You can't look at a child in school and tell you're going to be a drug dealer, dog, or you don't come from nowhere. A lot of children hear that every day, and that destroys the psyche of those children, and it destabilizes them, because sometimes they really believe that they can't be anything, because most of the people in the village, the honorable member for St. Michael East, St. Michael South, spoke earlier about the challenges he had in the neighborhood. But he knew and understood what his parents and teachers and guardians meant by do not follow the crowd. It is easy to follow the crowd, but it takes courage to stand alone. And that is what a lot of our young people need. Now, Mr. Speaker, it is about time we build some kind of facility to facilitate these young children who are on drugs. Some teachers have it hard, and I can't deny that. We have what I call them drug babies. Babies whose mothers would have been using drugs, and as a result, the children are born with challenges. They look normal, but they have learning defects, some of them. Not all that have learning defects are born because of challenges with drugs. And I hurt to see that we even have first-time offenders who have to go up to the Dodge prison. When we have a Louis Lake school up there, Mr. Speaker, sir, standing, we have spent over $4 million to put on a cover and to rehabilitate the school in the time when it was a school being attended by. And it hurts, and I cannot understand, sir. I am not a scientist, and I never will be. I am a school teacher, full stop. But I have difficulty in understanding how that facility, nobody has gone into it for more than 12 years. But the garden land is still there. There are businesses downwind from there. There's the church in White Park Road, the Wesleyan Holiness Church, I believe it is, if that is the name, where there is a basement where babies and other little children in nursery are there. The school meals are still there, but the Louis Lake school is still shut. I am not questioning scientists. What scientists can make and break it to anyhow. But that institution is there with all those buildings that can be turned into a facility with dorms and so that our first-time offenders, some innocent boys and girls, don't have to go to Dodge prison, to the hardened criminals, and then they too become hardened, and they learn how to do the things they've never dreamt of doing before. So I feel that if a facility of that nature, and the government has got quite a few institutions that have been closed now, and the structures are there, we're going to have to see how we can have those structures repaired, upgraded, and help some of our parents and guardians to come, and they too be given the training as to how to treat their children who may be involved in the drugs. I know too, sir, that there are some teachers and police and lawyers and others too who have been users of drugs, and some are addicted too. Not only the hard drugs like the marijuana and so, but some of them on alcohol. And therefore, I am not so sure how much they can do to help others unless they become rehabilitated and they go back and chip in their time, as was said by the honourable member for St. Philip South. West, look, too far west is south then. For St. Philip West, I beg your pardon, sir. I also want, Mr. Speaker, sir, to find out at this juncture in our discussion, whatever has happened to a report from a consultant in the Ministry of Education that was being done for more than 5 years, where the consultant was getting a large salary, I must tell you. And that consultant was expected to provide information having done the various investigations on bullying and children at risk. To this day, there's no report laid here, sir, in this honorable chamber. And I would want to call on the Ministry of Education to please make that report available to the cabinet and later to this honorable chamber, because that is information we need if we are to help the National Council on Substance Abuse and us as individuals here who are working with people in the communities to be aware and to put some of the recommendations in place to mitigate the challenges that our young people and our children face. We need to get it, sir. It is the taxpayers' money, and it needs to be made available. The person having had that remit, a former candidate for the Democratic Labour Party from St. Joseph, and we have not seen or heard anything about that report. And I speak under correction, but I know it has never been laid here in this honourable chamber. Mr. Speaker, sir, we also need to know of the recommendations to be able to help the NCSA in its work as it plans going forward. I know that our youth are exposed to a lot of vulnerabilities in the home, the communities and so, and I want to challenge those parents and guardians and others who put drugs in their children's bag and send them to school because that is a ready-made market, to desist from doing it. We are hearing about it. We heard of a schoolboy who went to a particular rural school last term with $9,000 in the bag and some drugs, because the parent told the child, carry it to school because I heard that there's going to be a drug raid down here today. That is the report, and it was in the newspaper, and that's the reason why I'm speaking about it. And I'm saying, what would have been the plan for the child to sell drugs in the school? We have men and women under trees, on the blocks, in houses, supplying a lot of children with drugs every day. You know what? The middle-class people children are some of the ones who are mostly targeted, because they're the ones that get the $20 per day to spend. And once they have the spending power, that is the incubator for any drug leader or drug dealer to be able to use those children, because they know that if they don't get the help from the NCSA and the psychiatric hospital and doctors and so on, they will then become their clients for life. And it pains me, Mr. Speaker, when I pass through Bridgetown, because it looks as though whenever somebody becomes addicted to drugs or they become psychiatric patients, they head from wherever in the country they come from to Bridgetown. And of course, I believe it's easier to get money and easier to get food and so on. But it hurts me to see these young, bright men and women, Mr. Speaker, rummaging through the garbage, coming from window to window on people's glasses, seeing you and begging you, and they are so unkempt. Many of them were bright young men and women who would have been exposed to the drugs through, I can't say anybody's fault, but through the exposure that they would have received from others. And I think that parents must be aware that once the children have a lot of money, they will spend it and they will be vulnerable. Their emotions are not so exposed, especially if they're children who come to school by car, because they don't get a chance to see and know what's going on. And most of the buses are walking to school, and they're the ones who are targeted because of the inexperience. And then, lo and behold, we have this large number of young people on our hands who are exposed to it. I want, sir, as well, to refer to children at primary school, because there are some sweets and so that are laced with drugs that our children seem to be having access to, and they're given to the children or sold. Again, that is the incubator for the drug people to have them be caught up in the whole drug business or to be addicted, and therefore those children, we lose them in the system. I want to encourage parents, guardians, teachers, and others to limit the funds you give these children. Give them the lunch to bring from home in most instances. I know the canteen people must make some money, but that's not always healthy, and the Honourable Minister of Health has to look into a lot of that. Too much macaroni pie and all kinds of nonsense, and then the chronic non-communicable diseases that are impacting on us and our children. But I want to say the easy access to money must stop. We must limit the funds, and we must monitor our children and their friends. And again, I will say here, watch the sleepovers. You don't know the pedophiles in there. You don't know the drug people in the households, your children going in. And as much as you may know them from church or from town or from work, you don't know the jungle you're putting your children in. Right here in Barbados, it is happening. And therefore, I'm admonishing the parents, be cautious where you send them. Talk with them, love them, care for them, chastise them when you have to. You don't have to use any hot spoon or any dog hunter as in our day. But there are ways that you can punish them, take away the technology. And you'll be surprised to see how those children will fall in line, because that is what is dearest to their heart. Every little boy and girl now is either a tablet or a cell phone or some piece of technology to keep it quiet. Put them away sometimes and talk with your children. You don't have to ask them if they got a slap at school that day. That is unnecessary. How did your day go? What did you learn? Who are your new friends? What did you eat? I gave you so and so, but I hope you didn't take anything. Teach our children not to be so licorice and begging. That is some of the problem too, because when they keep begging is when they get it. When I was in the classroom one year, there were children who used to beg, and a little boy took up some of the bait that was out of the scratch grain and so that was like a sugar cake, a nut cake. And when the child begged, the little boy gave them a piece and they eat it, had to be rushed to the hospital because they're too licorice, they beg too much. We need to stop our children from begging, and we need to stop them from taking things from people, whether they know them or not. We could not do it. Our children don't have to do it either, because they have a better life now than any of us who had to go to the standpipe, who had to cook on wood that they had to cook the week before and head it back home to be able to prepare and pot. In the yard with no kitchen. Our children have better life, Mr. Speaker, now than ever before, so they don't have to beg. They don't have to steal. They don't have to take anything from anybody. Be satisfied with what they have. Mr. Speaker, I'm not going to let you check the clock any more on me, except to come to the stage where the poor people's children are the ones who are worst off when finished. The middle class can pay for the counseling and for the boarding of their children in private institutions. Some of them don't ever let the children stay in Barbados either. They send them to Trinidad and other places, and we feel that they've gone to a university or something there. They've gone to rehab, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the poor people's children have to be here and then become scourges, and people stigmatize them and ill-treat them and so on. Therefore, I want for our children not to be pursued down that line, but for the adults to look after them. We got a spate of young children now who, a few years ago, date rapes were the order of the day. At a particular place in Christchurch, I will not name, but I know that it is near where the sewage plant burst. And a lot of girls that year brought home babies, some working class, some middle class, because the fellow who was mixing the drink in the bar dropped in whatever the drug was in a drink, because they left a drink on the counter and gone to the toilet. Carry the drink in the toilet with you. You're not using it to do what you want to do. Put it on the counter. But from the time they left it there, many of those young girls were raped, and they didn't even know what went on. Mr. Speaker, sir, I close. Because all of that costs the country, the government that is in a BERT program that should not have been in because of an uncaring government. It costs the taxpayers millions of dollars for the rehabilitation, for the counseling, the care, the institutionalization, and so on. Money that could be put to better use to help our youth to become the most productive citizens that we know they can be. And therefore, I'm happy that the NCSA is there to help us over there.
Honourable, you can wind up.
Yes, sir. I just want to say that there needs to be a collective approach to what we are doing, more collective than it is now. Data sharing is critical for the institution. It has to be confidential, critical. I know that the police force does the DARE program. I don't know what synergies there are there, but the Ministry of People Empowerment associates with impoverished persons, with families, ecclesiastical affairs, and various institutions that can help us. The Community Development Department and the Youth Affairs Department with the Youth Commissioners, all of them, civil society needs to be engaged in this fight to help with this scourge of the drugs that are impacting on our children in a similar way as it had been with the HIV Commission, where people were well sensitized. The NCSA needs that now, and I encourage all parents, your children should be engaged in extracurricular activities. Women now supersede men in the Scout movement when it comes to leaders. We need more men to join the Scouts. In the Scouts movement, our children become stronger because of the activities in which they are engaged. In community groups, that makes the difference. In the Brownies as well, in the Pathfinders. And there are so many other activities that will engage our children and turn them away, shove them into another activity or direct them into another activity where they can be wholesome citizens. I close by saying that I want all the community centers, all of the pavilions to be open during school time, not at 9 in the morning, Mr. Speaker, sir, and shut off at 4 o'clock. Who is going to go in there unless it's a public holiday?
I remember, you know, you sit side of the Honourable member St. Michael East. I noticed that. And
It's
it
not
is
community development, sir.
No, I just thought I would bring something to your attention. That I think seated beside you is the Honourable member for St. Michael East,
Yes,
correct?
sir.
And you know he has a tendency to flounder. He has a tendency to not to wind up at all.
Okay.
He has a problem. He has a problem with his
I will find the
helicopter.
landing gear, sir.
He's always had a problem with his helicopter.
Yes,
I
sir.
would hear the thing that you are also having a problem with your helicopter.
Okay, all right. Sometimes the female helicopter takes a little
See,
longer.
I knew that.
Yes, sir.
I knew that. You see, I knew that.
I just want in my final comment, and I thought that was most critical for our community centers and our pavilions to be open, not now at 9 in the morning and close at 4, but open at 4 in the evening and probably close at 9 or 10, so that our children can be able to use the playing fields. They are all well lit and to be able to do meaningful things and use up their energy. And that was the vision of Tom Adams when he said, we need daylight saving time. Daylight saving time would have worked well. There was a lot of opposition, but I think we need it again because our youth need to be guided, protected, everything else that is positive by all of us, sir, including you, the attorney at law, who does excellent work. And I'm sure that when you see your experiences, you will guide them along a different
I remember that
Thank
there's
you,
a
Your
problem that
Honor.
I had with the airline in Moscow.
Yes, please.
Remember that. Just remember that.
But that is only one of a
I just
1,000
remember that there's
airlines.
the problem that occurred with the Moscow and the fire
Yes,
that
sir.
they had.
And I believe, sir, as I close, that my experience here today and what I do will help you, sir, to take a little longer to land as well, whenever you are engaged, sir. I wish to thank you kindly.
Honourable member for St. James North.
What, Nigel, it's just one section. So we still going into committee. Right. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. I think that all would agree that this House has had an enlightening debate on this amendment. It was simply to remove minister, definition of minister from the legislation. As I said, because the Interpretation Act, Section 43, speaks to that. And, you know, rather than cause any problems or issues where a Prime Minister, for the time being, may wish to move or reassign particular ministers, whatever happens, the removal of the definition will be covered. But we've taken the opportunity, probably about 7 members of Parliament, to speak with our various expertise, whether it's medical, pharmaceutical, social work, community development, sir, to speak towards this bill and to speak in a wider frame of mind towards the organization, the National Council of Substance Abuse, the role it presently plays, the vision of the individual members to future role and functioning of the organization. I'm happy to see the support of all members who spoke, and no doubt within the wider membership of this Parliament, including
the Honourable Leader of the Opposition giving support to the organisation, sir, that carries out a significant mandate in this country in terms of social advancement, curtailing the spread of drug abuse. Various suggestions have been made, so in terms of change of name and all of that, but I think that we're at one that additional funding could be merited, sir, an expansion of the role. And as I said, Cabinet and obviously subject to Cabinet's approval, Parliament should have the opportunity to speak to those issues in the near future when my ministry has cause to present to Cabinet the updated anti-drug strategic plan, sir. So, sir, I'm happy to have gained the support. I sought, as I said, to speak in terms of the policies and programs of the department and its strategies going forward, the vision that it has, the future of it, but also going back to what it has done in the past. And, you know, we look forward, as I said, to the agency playing a greater role, even greater role, in the fight against illegal substance abuse, even substance abuse in this country, sir. And with that, sir, I do move that that Your Honour leave the chair and that the House resolve itself into...
Honourable member, you have to move the second...
Okay, yeah. Sorry, because I said that I move that the bill be read a second time earlier. And I'm doing it again, sir, sorry. I move that the bill be read for a second time, sir.
Question that this bill be read a second time. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Move that Your Honour now leave the chair and that the House resolve itself into committee to further consider this bill.
Question is that the Speaker do now leave the chair and the House resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
This House is now in committee.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Clause 1 stand part.
Question is that Clause 1 stand part. All honourable members in favor, please say aye. All honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Clause 2 stand part.
Question is that Clause 2 stand part. All honourable members in favor, please say aye. All honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that you do now report to His Honour the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee.
Question is that I do now report to the Honourable Speaker the passing of one bill in committee. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. All honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
The chairman of committees has reported the passing of one bill in committee.
Your Honour, I beg to now move that the bill be read a third time.
Question is that the bill be read a third time. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
Your Honour, I beg to move that this bill do now pass and be cited as the National Council on Substance Abuse Amendment Act 2019.
Question is that this bill be passed and so cited. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This bill is so passed and so cited. Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Order number 8, in the name, on the supplementary order paper, in the name of the Minister in the Ministry of Housing, Land and Rural Development, to move the passing of a resolution to approve under Section 5 of the Crown Lands Vesting and Disposal Act, Cap 225, the lease to the Maria Holder Memorial Trust, a parcel of land, the property of the Crown, situated at Upton in the parish of Christchurch in this island for the purpose of constructing a skate park for public use.
Honourable Member for St. John.
Mr. Speaker, the resolution before the House seeks permission to lease a parcel of Crown land measuring 9,111 square meters at Upton, Christchurch, to the Maria Holder Memorial Trust for the construction of a skate park. Mr. Speaker, only last week another resolution was brought before the House in relation to the same Maria Holder Trust. Now, this particular organization has been doing some yeoman service in concert with the government all across this country for a number of years. And I would have identified last week that the trust was put together as a result of her son trying to perpetuate her name as it relates to the work that she was doing in Barbados. Now, for 20 years, Mr. Speaker, I have worked in community development with a particular focus or using a youth lens. And I am acutely aware of the dearth of assistance that would come to communities across this island as a result of not having enough funds to facilitate a number of activities at community level, at what we would call the micro level. And this particular organization was instrumental in education, in training, in culture, in arts, emergency disaster relief, and healthcare. And now they're venturing into the realms of sport by constructing this skate park at Upton in the constituency of Christchurch East Central. And the reality is that we need to have more organizations that mimic the work of the Maria Holder Trust. We need to have companies and establishments in this island contributing not only in a minimal way, but helping organizations at community level to engage or to develop in whatever sphere that they're involved in. And only yesterday, for example, Mr. Speaker, I was speaking to the Class 4s at St. Margaret's Primary, and the head teacher at that school pointed out a retired teacher on the premises of St. Margaret's and indicated, look, at any point in time that you are planning to rename this school, it should carry his name. Because of the community involvement, because of what he's doing in terms of give back to this particular school at St. Margaret's. And I really want to salute the work of the Maria Trust, Memorial Trust, as it relates to what they're doing on the landscape across this country. I was reminded today by the Honourable Member for St. Peter about a number of organizations that are functioning out of one of the Ministry of Housing and Lands building at the Garrison. And the reality is that that particular building is in a state of disrepair, and we need to do some work on the particular building. The other reality, Mr. Speaker, is the fact that the 4 organizations or 5 organizations that currently occupy the space within that building is looking for a home. And the truth is that we have tried on several occasions. They themselves would have done searches to see if there is a building that can be utilized as a home for this particular organization. And too often in Barbados, we bypass these NGOs and CBOs that are contributing to the life, particularly of young persons within this country. And like I said, for more than 2 decades, I have been using a youth lens. I have been involved with NGOs and CBOs as it relates to moving our young people forward. And to have the Maria Holder Memorial Trust engage in activities such as the creation of a skate park is a plus, because it is providing an opportunity, Mr. Speaker, for a whole range of activities at that location. It is providing our young people with wholesome activity. It is a new venture on the landscape of Barbados, and I dare say that it will be well patronized by persons, young persons, and those of us who are youth at heart. Now, I have been also involved in the sport of basketball for a long time. It is one of the areas that I would say, Mr. Speaker, that I get my release by watching the local basketball. I coached for a number of years. And I know that that particular NF, National Federation, is also looking for a home. Seated to my left is the Honourable Minister of Sports, and I believe that maybe representation can be made at some point in time to the Maria Holder Trust in terms of identifying a home for that particular sport. Now, I remember when I was the vice president of that particular national federation, there was a proposal to do a lottery, Mr. Speaker, in Barbados, and part of the condition from the organization was that they would construct a home for basketball. But the reality also is that money was requested from that particular gentleman in order to set up that lottery in Barbados, and it never came to fruition. And I'm suggesting that if the Maria Holder Trust is interested now in developing sports on the landscape in Barbados, that these are areas that we can try to see if we can tap into as it relates to finding a home that will service not only basketball, but will service netball and a whole range of indoor sports. Because the reality is that a lot of our sports are played outdoors, and the elements wreak havoc in relation to the completion of competitions, in relation to how we train, as it relates to the whole spectrum of sports is impacted because we do not have a home that can be used for that particular purpose. And Mr. Speaker, the reality is that this will probably not be the final time that you will hear the name of the Maria Holder Trust coming to this August chamber as it relates to developing our young people in Barbados. As I mentioned before, we know of the 6 schools that are being proposed for construction. I believe that 3 are already completed, and there's a further 3 that is also coming down the pipelines as it relates to those nursery schools. I was reminded earlier by a couple of the speakers of the institution that was constructed in St. John, with particular focus on getting young females back into mainstream society. So the work of this organization cannot in any way be minimized, cannot in any way be held as truly the aim and the goal of most NGOs and charities as they function on this landscape. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to outline some of the terms and conditions that are attached to this particular resolution going forward. And it is stated here that the lease is to be for a term of 20 years with an option to renew for a further 20 years. The rent shall be a one-time payment of $200 plus VAT payable in advance. The rent should be subject to review at the end of the first term. The premises are being leased for the purpose of the construction of a skate park. The lease shall be the trust, should be responsible for the cost of the development of the site. The trust shall comply with the requirements of all the planning, building, safety, and health and related legislation throughout the term. The trust shall indemnify the Crown from all actions arising from its use of the premises. Mr. Speaker, as I present this resolution, I know that the particular skate park is practically completed and slated to be open, I believe, at the end of this week on Saturday. And I think all of us in this chamber would love an opportunity to benefit from having an entity constructed in our own constituencies to benefit young people. And I will be moving with some haste to ensure that the constituency of St. John is not, yes, the Honourable Member for St. Peter, to ensure that the constituency of St. John also benefit from what is on offer through the Memorial Trust. Because I am aware, and I believe that all of us who are now in this August chamber should identify locations within our constituency that can be redeveloped or developed into entities that will benefit young persons. And I am pleased that I am able to identify at least 2 such buildings within the constituency of St. John, and I will be working with another NGO to send forward a proposal, hoping that in addition to what has been constructed at Bath, that we will have facilities in St. John similar to what obtained in the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central constituency. So, Mr. Speaker, with those few words, I am asking and begging that this resolution be passed. I am obliged.
Member for St. Peter.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I want to speak pretty briefly to this land resolution. Last time we were here, I would have spoken at some length about the work of civil society organizations, and particularly at that time, I would have spoken about the work of the Maria Holder Memorial Trust. Since that occasion, I've had the good fortune this would have been on Friday last week, to declare open and to cut the ribbon for another project of the Maria Holder Memorial Trust, which is the Spikestown Lighthouse Center, a project where the Maria Holder Memorial Trust would have assisted the Salvation Army in creating a space, a building, for the benefit of Spikestown, but also for the benefit of the surrounding community and for the benefit of the North. On that occasion, I spoke to the fact that the Maria Holder Memorial Trust has done quite a bit of work for young people. And I think it is not possible for me to commend them too much for the focus that they've placed on helping and developing young people. In the constituency of St. Peter, the Spikestown Lighthouse Center was the 3rd project funded by the Maria Holder Memorial Trust, but the first 2 projects were facilities specifically dedicated to assisting young people. The Marina Brewster Home at Fars, as well as the Play Park in Boscobel. This skate park that where the land for which we are debating or discussing by way of addressing this resolution today, is another step in the work of the trust, the Maria Holder Memorial Trust, in its quest to develop young people. And I say another step because it is somewhat new in the Trust's approach. Like I said, there's been the play park before, which is somewhat traditional, but the move toward a skate park suggests to me that the Maria Holder Memorial Trust is really thinking about novel ways of assisting young people and working to develop young people in Barbados. The young in Barbados, young people, children, have to be given attention. You know, we often say, and I say we meaning adults, often speak to the next generation. But too often, while speaking about the next generation, we are not addressing the issue of building the capacity of the next generation. Too often, and I think I may be reflecting a bit of what the Honourable Member for St. Thomas said, and I have to be careful because I cannot reflect everything that she has said, including what she said to you, Mr. Speaker. But
I think that's experience is see and maturity that she probably exhibited, you see.
Oh, I see. Since I'm not yet there, I will take my time. But she spoke to parents providing gadgets for their children. And very often, there is the feeling that by providing these gadgets, that is all that is necessary for the building of the next generation. But I want to suggest that building a generation speaks to a range of actions, a range of activities, a range of modalities, and developing a whole plethora of skills, abilities, and talents. It also speaks to stimulating imagination, doing new things that will excite, and that will not just excite, but will work in building value systems, building people in a holistic manner. Now, the advent of gadgets and the proliferation of gadgets has done a number of good things. It has allowed our young people to access information that they may not have been otherwise able to access, or that it might have been very difficult for them to access. And that is a good thing. There are others who say that it builds hand-eye coordination. And I'm not very versed in those matters, but I can understand why either people feel so or it may actually be so. Because, you know, playing games and helps people to think and think quickly, those kinds of things. But we have an issue that the Honourable Member for the City of Bridgetown would have spoken to, and others, the whole matter of reduced physical activity. And I quite remember the Honourable Member for the City, I saw a video clip with him somewhere in Heroes Square attempting to, actually was playing road tennis against the Honourable Member who just took his seat. I do not remember who won, but they all looked like worn out old men when they were finished. And while I am not trying to denigrate them, I am using that example of worn out people to say that we have to do things to improve the physical aspect of our young people. And I believe an attraction, a facility like a skate park can do much to help young people get engaged in something that they find exciting, but will allow them to develop themselves physically, get fit, be active, maybe sometimes take their heads out of their tablets and out of their phones and actually get physically involved in an activity that will redound to their benefit. And I think that move is a move that has to be commended. We speak about young people, and often when we talk about developing young people, apart from parents giving gadgets and those kinds of things for development, we also talk about education. But when we talk about education, it is often education as it relates to the classroom, education as it relates to academics. And I want to suggest, Mr. Speaker, that it is time that we see sports as an integral part of education. Sports, Mr. Speaker, builds team spirit much better than any group project at any school or any community college or any university. Sports helps people to recognize that they are part of a larger group, that others are depending on them. The competitive nature of what is taking place is driving them, and they can be better prepared for the world of work, for example, through sports, than only focusing on the academic or the technical aspects of education. And I think we have to place an emphasis on sports which locates sports squarely as an educational endeavor. You learn skills, you develop skills, but you also learn that you're part of a team. And I believe that a society can achieve significant benefits from developing sports and encouraging young people to get involved in sports. That includes having facilities like a skate park that will excite the interest and imagination of the young people and cause them to get involved. I also want to suggest that responsible adults, like we all are here, need to keep close to those young people who are involved in sports. All too often, in my moving around, there is the feeling that there are sports that adults should keep away from because they attract violence, they attract unsavory activity, they attract misbehavior. And I would want to suggest, like I've done before, by suggesting that responsible adults should try wherever possible to live in the districts that they come from, I would want to suggest that responsible adults need to stay close to young people, need to stay close to them as they play their sports, need to stay close enough that when, as I saw one night in my constituency, when a guy was sent off during a football game, he went to his bag, and while he was taking something out of his bag, there were some adults around who were able to speak to him and to restrain him in a way that would allow him to calm down, so that he would not have to end up coming to you to ask for your assistance in another place. And so I want to say that adults need to stay close to young people as young people get involved in these sporting activities. Our role as leaders, as adults, as responsible people must be to guide, not to criticize. I remember very, very clearly when football was looking for a home in the Wilde area. I remember reading in the newspaper and sometimes hearing on the news the views of some people that they didn't want these activities that would bring violence. But I want to say to Barbadians, Mr. Speaker, no place in Barbados will be safe. No individual, however many burglar bars they have, how many ever licensed firearms they have, how many ever electronic monitoring and safety devices they have, will be safe if young people are not taught values, if young people are abandoned, then the entire society will implode. And I want to appeal to those who may have been affluent for a long time, but particularly to people who were born poor, who have now become what they consider to be affluent because they are able to go to a few cocktail parties and mix with people who they determine to be higher up and better off. That's still the term we use in Rosehill. I want to appeal to those people because many of them are just about 4 or 5 months away from poverty. I want to appeal to them to support the communities that have given them the heads up, the hand up. I want to appeal to them to get in there with the young people and to assist them in their sporting and other endeavors. We have to meet people where they are. And as a Christian, Mr. Speaker, we often talk about the fact that Jesus went into the highways and the byways, went into the rum shops, spoke with prostitutes, because you have to meet people where they are. If you think that they are not where they ought to be, then you can't stand on the sideline and shout at them and tell them, move over there. You have to get in there with them. You have to win their trust, win their confidence. They have to be able to open up to you. And then you can, once they have built that relationship, or you all have built, or we all have built that relationship, then we can move the person who we feel needs to be moved on. We can move them to a place where they may have the values that we think they ought to have. I'm appealing to adults, I'm appealing to Barbados and Barbadians as a society to let us hold tight with our young people, not to be talking about a lost generation. We already had a lost decade. We don't need a lost decade and a lost generation too. And I don't think that the evidence is not there to support the claim of a lost generation. There are a few people who have gone down the wrong road, and in every generation, there will be a few, excuse me, who will go down the wrong road. But we cannot abandon an entire generation because a few have chosen to go down the wrong road. We have to stand shoulder to shoulder with our young people. And I want to commend the Murray Holder Memorial Trust for standing with the young people of Barbados and for supporting them in a range of activities, whether it is working to build children at the kindergarten level, whether it's providing play parks for young people in communities, or now providing a skate park for teenagers and maybe young adults to get involved in an activity that will help them physically, help them mentally, and help the society as a whole. There are a number of issues before I take my seat that I would want to speak to, and these are issues that young people in my constituency have raised with me over the years, and I've tried, and I continue to try, and I'm saying it not just because I'm standing next to the minister responsible for sports or looking directly at the minister responsible for community development, but there continues to be the issue of the availability of pavilions and community centers for the use of the people in the communities, particularly young people. And I know that the Ministry of Youth and Community Development under the Honourable Member for St. Michael West Central, Christchurch West Central, is working on a plan, and I had cause in one of my communities on Saturday night to indicate to them that the ministry is looking at a model for managing community centers and decentralizing the management of community centers across Barbados. And I would just want to both reassure them, but also give a little bit of a nudge to the honourable member, my friend from Christchurch, West Central, that we need to move forward with that. Decentralize so that the management of these facilities designed to build and develop communities, especially the young people in communities, we have to move forward in getting that plan in place so that we can actually improve the access of young people to facilities where they can play sports. They've asked me in that particular community for a number of items of equipment, and we will be working to provide those pieces of equipment so that our young people can develop. Young people in St. Peter, Mr. Speaker, do not want every time they hear a siren, to have to be running. Young people in Barbados generally do not want to live that kind of life. They do not want to lead that kind of existence. They want better. But as adults and as a society, we have the responsibility not of providing everything for them, but of providing a platform that allows them to soar, to develop, to reach the stars. And we as a party, we as a country, owe that to our young people. I also want to say to the honourable member for St. Philip West that there are still a couple of playing fields that need lights, and there are also, he is asking for money. I believe he is looking at the honourable member for Christchurch East Central in that regard. But young people need proper facilities, and the playing field at Worley in St. Peter is in need of lights, and I will continue to agitate on behalf of the people in Quarter National Hall for lighting on that field. It is a well-used field. It is one that is actually at the center of St. Peter. And the young people there, they play a lot of football, cricket is played there, lights are needed. I also want to say that there are other grounds with lights, but we have the issue where, and this just on Easter Monday, we are playing a match in Black Bess, but of the, I think, 6 lights, only 4 of them are working. Now that distorts lighting on the field, and it affects the way that the cricket match was played, and that any match can be played on the playing field. And so there are, even at a time when financing is restricted, because we took office at a time when the kitty was left dry by those who last disturbed this honourable chamber in government. But we still have a responsibility to do whatever we can to ensure that good facilities are provided for the young people of this country, to allow them to develop physically, but also to keep them out of trouble, because the devil still finds work for idle hands. And if we do not provide opportunities for activity, then I am not sure how credible we are in criticizing them for finding alternative activity. In order to take away that option as an excuse, we as a society have to provide the facilities whereby our young people are able to expend their energies, develop themselves, and develop the kind of character that will allow them to be good citizens. And so, Mr. Speaker, with those words, I want to support this land resolution, providing land for the Maria Holder Memorial Trust to continue their excellent work, and especially their work on behalf of the young people of Barbados. I commend, like I did last week, this civil society organization, this third sector organization, to other civil society organizations in Barbados, and to say to them that while you may not have the quantum and magnitude of resources, you can be as effective where you are. Because I believe that every individual that we can impact positively, we have done an excellent job for the country and for the world. And with those remarks, Mr. Speaker, I'm obliged to you.
Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to also lend my support to this resolution because, sir, when I had the good fortune of being elected as a Member of Parliament for Christchurch East Central just short of 12 months ago, sir, one of the first orders of business in those very hectic 2, 3, 4 weeks on assuming office, there was a file that came to my desk, sir, and upon reading it and the history associated with it, sir, I could not imagine why it would take so long to do something so obvious. And, sir, as I read through the file, and notwithstanding the fact that it is within my constituency, but having canvassed the length and breadth of this country, sir, and seeing the lack of interest shown to young people and certainly shown to the many communities across this country, we as a government formulated our policies and our manifesto in response to that. And so this skate park, sir, which really sits in what you may call a national sporting zone in my constituency, just made sense. And so this was one of the first orders of business, if you like, sir, that I had the good fortune of approving within the ministry to set this in motion. And, sir, as I reflect on the fact that we are now approaching the first anniversary of coming to office in this country last year, and this very skate park, sir, is going to be opened officially on Saturday, it really gives me hope that as we have embarked on bringing Barbados back, sir, that the investment now that we have to make as a country in young people, not just as government, but by involving various NGOs as well as the private sector, sir, in this endeavor, that we, sir, are indeed on the right track because we have to invest in the future of this country. And this, sir, is very timely because as we have reached a stage now where things are relatively stable, and as I said during in the previous debate, sir, that now is the time to go to do some of those very specific reforms. The fact that we are approaching this milestone, if you like, of 1 year, sir, and having approved this very project just in the same time frame 11 months ago, I want to say through you, sir, to the country that this government has set in train a plan, sir, that is executable. And when we start something, sir, we shall finish it. And I think that for the thousands of young persons, sir, who across the country, and not just in my constituency, but across the country, who have said to us as we canvass the length and breadth of this country that they want opportunities. This is but one of those opportunities, sir, that we have been able to facilitate on the behalf of all Barbadians, but certainly, sir, on behalf of young people, to show them, sir, that there's a different way to express themselves. And I believe, sir, that this is a wonderful opportunity for the people of Barbados. And as I said, sir, in completing that sporting zone up in Wildy/Upton, as the official records will say, but we know it's Wildy. But the reality, sir, is that we now have to embark on a process whereby we, having come in this chamber a few months ago to debate the estimates, and during the budget debate, sir, I was at pains to state that the way that this government intends to spend money, sir, is to make sure that we get the right balance between the economics and the social impact that we want to have in this country. And throughout those estimates debates and the resulting allocation of funds, sir, we have determined that we want to engage young people right across the length and breadth of this country. This is but one opportunity for that engagement. And so this fits, sir, within the overall strategy of this government in terms of bringing about a recovery in the minds of young people who would have experienced, sir, a decade of little or no attention being paid to them, to their interests, or to providing any opportunity, sir, for exposure. Because whilst they're the traditional sporting activities that we will seek to amplify, sir, we must now expose our young people, sir, to different opportunities such that we can broaden, sir, the horizons for our young people in this country. And I believe, sir, that this is but one of those opportunities which we will amplify. And there are myriad of areas, sir, that we will seek to do so. And I know that this government will continue to work, as I said, sir, to bring not just the NGOs, the private sector on board to be able to deliver for the young people of this country. But, sir, this really presents an opportunity now, and I think, as the honourable member for St. Peter would have indicated, every community across the length and breadth of this country, sir, has to play a role in seeking to bring along young people. Every community. No matter where you stand in the social strata, sir, every Barbadian must be committed, sir, to providing spaces, sir, for young people to engage in productive activity. And even though it may not be your thing, sir, we must give support where we can give support. So I don't anticipate, sir, that the persons in the immediate environs may be au fait with skating, but we will invite, sir, the persons in the communities to come and see the spectacle, see the talent that will be on shore. And in so doing, sir, we hope that with that kind of integration across the length and breadth of Barbados, that we can really show our young people, as well as communities where we go and engage in specific sporting events, that we can start to rebuild, sir, that social capital that has been lost, in part because perhaps financially a lot of communities and households have been strained, and we've been, rather than hold together firmer, we've sought to look out for our own interests. But this is an opportunity, sir, to help to rebuild some of that social capital, simply because we need to engage, sir. And the government certainly is committed to promoting that engagement. And I would encourage, sir, through you, all of Barbados to seek to come to Christchurch Central, to visit the skate park, get the schools, the various community groups, sir, to engage and expose as many young people, sir, over the next year as possible. Because, sir, I would love to see, either on X Games, on ESPN, or wherever, sir, some Barbadian learning to skate in Wildy, representing Barbados, sir, in X Games globally. And this is the kind of opportunity, sir, that now presents itself for young Barbadians. And this is something, sir, that we can support. This government, sir, is clearly in support of. And I would want to, sir, I can't stress it any stronger. This is an opportunity, sir, for every Barbadian, not, sir, to be left behind. And it's something that persons must now seek out these opportunities, support the persons who are putting on the training and the activity in the space. Respect the space, sir, as we would the AstroTurf or the football facility just east of the venue, the gymnasium. Because as we are investing, sir, in young people, they must invest in making sure that they take care of the facilities that are being provided. And that is what I would love to see, sir. That in 5, 6 years, there's some Barbadian, very talented, representing Barbados in extreme sport. And this is the part of the new way that we would like to expose Barbadians to. And as we bring on stream, sir, different, not just sporting activities, but cultural activities, which I'm sure the member for St. Philip West will be able to articulate, that whilst we will strengthen the traditional areas, we must also expose our young people and their minds and broaden the horizons, sir. Because in broadening those horizons, the opportunities for different types of employment within those spaces presents themselves. The opportunity, sir, to engage with persons, not just in Barbados, but regionally, sir, and internationally, sir, presents themselves. And we want, sir, wherever possible, for young people to be able to take advantage of any opportunity, sir, whether in Barbados or outside of Barbados, and be the best that they can be at whatever skill that they have. And this is one area, sir, that I feel very strongly that whilst it is physically located in my constituency, and it would encourage my constituents to frequent the skate park, I want to invite the whole of Barbados, sir, up to Wilde over the course of the next 12 months to see what is available there for them, and let us, sir, work with each other and support each other. Because I want to see, sir, within the shortest possible time, some young Barbadian representing us on the World Extreme Games, because that, sir, is something that will make this country proud. Now, sir, the philanthropy is a wonderful thing. And as you are aware, we are operating in very straitened financial circumstances. And so the government, as part of of our plan, is to try to facilitate, sir, the participation of as many players, so to speak, stakeholders, if you like, in the building out and the redevelopment of Barbados. And where we can get partnerships, particularly in areas where we can expose young people, and where we can leverage, sir, the relationships that some of the capital that, and the interests that some of the philanthropists may have throughout their network, that in building social capital in Barbados, that we can also create economic opportunities for our young people to participate globally. And I think that this is a model, sir, that allows for us to benefit domestically in terms of driving economic activity with respect to the construction associated with these things, as well as providing that, as I said, rebuilding some of that social capital. But it is really, sir, about leveraging the network of some of these philanthropists, not just for the economics of it, but certainly, sir, to build the character of certainly young people in this country, such that wherever they go in the world to represent this small country called Barbados, sir, that they will leave a mark, an indelible mark, sir, wherever they go, to say that is a Bajan proudly representing their country, rooted as the Prime Minister would say, in Barbadian values, but is a global citizen. And that is the kind of young person, sir, that we want, and that we want to represent us. And therefore, the support of the communities, support of government, support of the churches in wholesome activity. Wholesome activity. And this is something now that requires many of us to have open minds with respect to activities, because it is the open-mindedness, sir, which creates the space and comfort for young people to traverse the length and breadth of this country, to participate within communities and feel safe and comfortable, sir, that those types of engagements will build fruitful relationships across the length and breadth of this country. And it is that support, sir, that I believe, just as much as we are trying to stabilize at the macro level, that at the social level, sir, that social stability and that social foundation can be rebuilt. And so the encouragement, sir, of given government's financial circumstances at the moment, the facilitation of philanthropy, as well as corporate interests with respect to helping to deliver some of these facilities, obviously is part of the modus operandi of this government to be able to help fulfill the mandate that we would have, that the people of Barbados would have given to us. And so this is key, sir. It is a start, and I know that there is a whole lot left to be done, and I want to thank certainly the Ministry of Creative Economy, Culture and Sports for being the lead ministry with respect to the execution of this particular project. But as we go forward, sir, the people of Barbados, I really want to encourage everybody to, at the earliest opportunity, to make themselves available, to avail themselves, sir, of the opportunity that presents itself within my constituency. And with those few words, sir, I'm obliged to you.
Honourable member for St. Philip West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to make a very short intervention on this particular resolution. First, let me say how proud I am that this government in particular has been able to be a part of the actual execution of this particular project. And I thank all of the members who have spoken so far for articulating a lot of what I would have wanted to say. But apart from this skate park being accessible to our young people and to locals, it also adds another dimension to our tourism product. And if you do the research, you will see that there are lots of people who travel all over the world for sporting activities. And just south of us in Brazil, there's a huge opportunity now for us to get persons who are involved in skating at the highest level to actually have some exchanges with our young people here. I also want to take the opportunity to salute the Barbados Skateboarding Association, because these young people, prior to having this particular facility at their disposal, were out there building out their own things using wood and in different places and honing their skills, so to speak. So I'm sure that they themselves, in having conversations with them, are really excited about this. And I want to commend them for the work that they have done before. And I look forward also, as the minister quite rightly said, to seeing a lot more of our young people opening up themselves to getting involved in new sports, because you never know where it can take you. And I just want everybody, as he said, to come out and enjoy what is really a monumental effort on behalf of the Maria Holders Trust, who continue time and time again to be of great assistance to this country. And I hope that with the opening of this skate park, that other players would see this also as an opportunity for them to become involved with the ministry, as we have a number of projects that we want to execute across this country, not only in terms of the physical games such as skating and stuff like that, but esports is another thing that is becoming very popular all over the world, and we are definitely in the marketplace for someone to come along and help us to create an esporting facility. So I just want to add my 2 cents, so to speak, to say congratulations are in order to the Trust for being there for us, and we look forward to seeing many young Barbadians taking the opportunity to make use of this park. And as the minister said, who knows, we may see the Barbados flag flying at the X Games in the not too distant future. With that, I thank you.
Member for St. John.
Mr. Speaker, I want to say thank you to all of those members who would have contributed to this particular resolution, and we would have heard the benefits that will be derived from this particular skate park. I am sure that in the not so distant future, I will see maybe some of the members in here trying something at the particular location. Maybe the member for Christchurch East Central would lead the charge as far as that is concerned. So not to prolong the situation, Mr. Speaker, like I said, I want to thank those who contributed, and I wish that this resolution do now pass.
Questions that this resolution do no pass. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. This resolution stands passed. Honourable member for the City of Bridgetown.
Mr. Speaker, that brings us to the end of government business for today's sitting, and I beg to move that the House be adjourned until next Tuesday, the 14th of May at 10 a.m. in the forenoon.
The questions that this honourable chamber stands adjourned until the 14th day of May at 10 a.m. in the forenoon. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Meeting the ayes have it. This honourable chamber stands adjourned until the 14th day of May at 10 a.m. in the forenoon.